planners, the community, elected officials, applicants, developers. Everybody will have a better idea as to what the end result is. So that's also going to be, this, like I mentioned, this is going to be one of the first parts of the city that's going to be getting the new zoning code. Next slide, Nathan. And this is, let me shrink this screen here. There we go. This is the community plan where Toluca Lake is in. Right here, you can see the corridor right in the middle there. That is, or the big street, that's Ventura Boulevard. Along that, you can see that that's where a lot of the commercial activity really takes place. There really isn't another. You have Lancashire as another major street here. Riverside Drive is smaller in scale. So we're looking at, basically the yellow is for the most part, 90-something% going to be staying the same up in the hills. That's not really changing, at least in terms of our first proposal. And, we're going to be looking at, as was mentioned here, the commercial, centers, multifamily residential, the very little industrial space. They're actually in this community plan. What's at the CBS studio. That's the only industrial space that's just about left in the area there, and looking at various other land uses. Next, Nathan.
Isaiah's back, by the way, just so you know, if he's can.
Are you back, Isaiah?
Yes, sorry about that. Using a different laptop now.
Okay.
I can take over from here. So just a bit about where we are in the update process. There are 5 phases that community plans must go through when they are being updated. In the listen phase, we conducted initial background research and did extensive community engagement to identify key issues and opportunities. We're currently in the share phase, during which we take everything we hear. In the listen phase, we translate it into initial proposals and continue to get feedback. We hosted land use concept workshops and office hours in 2019 and 2020, which did not include the Ventura-Cahuenga corridor at that time. We're currently doing outreach for the Ventura-Cahuenga corridor, and because of this, we have extended the share phase to engage community members in the visioning process for this key commercial corridor before moving ahead to the consult phase. Many of you may already be aware of the changes to the community plan update work program and this and the Ventura-Cahuenga specific plan amendment work program, but just to provide, I guess, some brief information about these changes. The Ventura specific plan amendment was initiated, that was in 2019 in response to a 2017 council motion. The work program focuses on amending the specific plan to achieve a more modern and streamlined regulatory process. As an example, the amendment aims to simplify reduce the time frame of the sign approval process, which will help small businesses along the corridor, in addition to other streamlined efforts. The amendment will also update project impact assessment fees and allowable expenditures that will apply to public realm improvements that are not currently allowed in the specific plan of today. The specific plan amendment team initially proposed to rezone the boulevards utilizing the new zoning code, but in August of 2021, this rezoning portion of the work program shifted over to the community plan update teams, as David mentioned. So this shift is a response to community and council office input. Folding the rezoning into the community plan update work program will mean changing what's possible on the Ventura-Cahuenga corridor. So we are folding this work into the Sherman Oaks Studio City Toluca Lake Cahuenga Pass community plan area. We're absorbing the Ventura-Cahuenga corridor into the larger Southeast Valley community plan updates.
Isaiah, excuse me.
Yes.
This is all a whole lot of information that is extremely important. Can you slow down just a tiny bit? I'm trying to.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No worries. Yes, apologies for that. So yes, we are folding in this rezoning into this community plan update process. I will say that for the first time, our team has hosted public outreach events focused on the boulevard. This past June and July, we held webinars, and we also held several virtual office hours sessions. We held webinars to share the recently released draft land use concepts for the Ventura-Cahuenga corridor in Sherman Oaks, Studio City, and Cahuenga Pass in those neighborhoods. The concepts that we shared are the initial vision for how the corridor will grow and change over the next 20 years. We also hosted these webinars just we wanted to get feedback on our proposals. So after the webinars took place, our team hosted virtual office hour sessions in July to solicit input on the draft land use concepts for the corridor. It took time for us to put the land use concepts together and prepare for the outreach. That took several months. We're currently working on the feedback summary that includes all the feedback that we've heard during our outreach for the Ventura-Cahuenga corridor, and that will be released in the coming months. Simultaneously, we are working on doing an analysis for the zoning and land uses of every parcel in the Southeast Valley Community Plan area so that we can get to the next phase. In the consult phase, we will share a proposed general plan land use map. We will develop zoning regulations and begin the draft environmental impact report process with a scoping meeting. And in the finalized phase, we will rely on community feedback from a planned public hearing to revise the proposed general plan land use map, draft zoning, and draft plan text. We will also publish the draft EIR ahead of the adoption process. The last phase is the adopt phase, which begins the City Planning Commission hearing, followed by hearings before the Planning and Land Use Management Committee of the City Council and the full City Council. Next slide, please. So, of course, none of this work would be possible without the extensive community engagement thus far as we continue. Since the beginning of the process in 2018, we've attended or hosted over 120 events and meetings. We've met with neighborhood and community organizations. We've tabled at community events. We've hosted a number of workshops and office hours. We've met with interested groups or individuals along the way. The pandemic has limited our ability to meet in person, but we've continued to engage with community members while working remotely. We've heard a lot from this neighborhood council about some of the strengths and challenges in Toluca Lake and what you all would like to see more of in the future related to housing, commercial development, mobility, open and green space, and design. We are taking all of the feedback that you all have shared with us, and we're taking that into consideration. The last time the plans were updated in the Southeast Valley, that was back in the late 1990s. And we're very grateful to the community members and organized groups who have engaged with LA City Planning in the last few years. So with that, we can go to the next slide. So these are the guiding principles that have been established for us to follow as we update these community plans. These are a foundation of the policy text that will accompany each of the community plan areas. So this new set of uniform principles was created based on input from community members and to reflect the department's renewed commitment to racial equity following the summer of 2020. We've added a guiding principle about encouraging walkable neighborhoods that offer a range of amenities and destinations, and another about raising design expectations and recognizing unique development patterns, which we've heard from groups in Toluca Lake. We've also heard a lot from the community about the need for open and green space. So we've included a guiding principle here to support a built environment with open spaces that sustain people, wildlife, and ecosystems. From these guiding principles, each community plan area will have a set of strategies and programs to achieve these sort of higher level guiding principles. So yes, we welcome your feedback on these throughout the process and hope to hear, whether this set of principles addresses the range of policy goals that you each have for the Southeast Valley. And I'll just add to that absorbing the Ventura Boulevard specific plan into the community plans will help us implement many of these guiding principles. So that's going to be helpful. Next slide, please. So now I'll talk a bit about the Southeast Valley draft land use concepts. Just for some context, in 2019, the team released draft land use concepts for the larger Southeast Valley. This was before the council motion happened that required us to rezone the Ventura-Cahuenga corridor as part of the community plans. The primary policy goals behind the concepts were to prioritize growth along commercial corridors and in areas near existing or proposed quality transit. You can see that some of the areas where the most growth is proposed are near Lankershim Boulevard and portions of North Hollywood, Studio City and Toluca Lake, Laurel Canyon Boulevard and Valley Village, and Van Nuys Boulevard and Van Nuys. These are the proposed regional center and community center general plan land use designations shown in the shades of red on the map. In each of these proposed concept areas, there are a mixture of land uses proposed, basically to encourage a variety of housing types, including mid-high rise mixed use buildings, mid-rise multifamily buildings, and low-scale housing typologies such as townhomes and 2 to 4plexes. After the release of this map, we heard general consensus around prioritizing growth along commercial corridors and near existing or incoming transit. We also heard from folks that there were concerns about the height of future development, as well as added density in traditional single-family neighborhoods. I'd like to note that the area shown on the right side of this map that is outlined with a blue line shows the boundaries of the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council. This map shows that the Neighborhood Council is located in 2 community plan areas. That includes North Hollywood Valley Village and also the Sherman Oaks, Studio City, Toluca Lake, Cahuenga Pass community plan area. So these drafted initial concepts show how growth could be accommodated along different parts of the Southeast Valley community plan areas. And these are only like in draft form, nothing has been finalized yet. We want to continue to hear from the community, and hopefully these concepts can jumpstart the dialogue for discussing the future. Next slide, please. So this map shows all of the proposed land use concepts for Sherman Oaks, Studio City, Toluca Lake, Cahuenga Pass. For example, these light pink areas are where we are proposing the neighborhood center general plan land use designation. Orange shaded areas are where we are proposing the medium residential general plan land use designation, and so forth. On this map, we have tried to capture the location of the Toluca Lake community shown in that red rectangle there on the right side of the map. We are proposing the community center general plan land use designation on portions of Lankershim, Cahuenga Boulevard, and Riverside Drive, which is shown in red, that big red blob there on the map. The feedback that we have received in the past is to keep the high density growth on Lankershim. We're not proposing to increase capacity at the portion of Riverside Drive that is in the Toluca Lake CDO. Lankershim, Violin, and Riverside are major corridors in the plan area that currently do not provide a dense mix of jobs and housing. The corridor has the ability to support a dense mix of residential and commercial uses, but currently does not. We are proposing to increase the maximum density, FAR, and height allowed on the boulevard to encourage more dense development. According to the feedback that we received from the community members in both Toluca Lake and Studio City, there was no opposition to seeing new development along these corridors. In fact, people would like to see a variety of uses and mixed use buildings along these corridors. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the concept descriptions for all of the proposed land use designations for this community plan area. The map on the previous slide showed where the community center GPLU designations would go. What we're trying to achieve here, we want to apply the community center land use designation in this area is to promote a vibrant hub of economic activity with a combination of employment, shopping, and dining opportunities along Lankershim, Riverside, and Vineland. We also want to allow for a range of housing options near the Universal City Red Line station to meet the needs of current and future residents. We want to regulate the scale and transitional height of future development to ensure compatibility with adjacent residential neighborhoods. We also want to enhance the public realm and encourage design treatments. So we will continue to look at these areas and work on developing our general plan land use map. We can go to the next slide. I'm sure you all have some questions for us. So that completes the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Isaiah. I really appreciate that. Very informative. And we will go directly to our next section, which is comments and questions from committee members. So, and then after that, we'll do public comments. And so any committee members, please raise your hand and we will go in order there and take some questions. First one on the list is Ren Blight. Go ahead, Ren.
Yeah, I've got, of course, a lot of questions, but I'll start with the last one and work the other way. The map you showed, you talked about Lancashire Boulevard, but the map you showed a very large pink area that was all the way from Cahuenga all the way over to the far end of West Toluca Lake. It seems like, I mean, at first glance, it looks like one size fits all, so that all of that area would be open for large-scale development. I hope I'm wrong, but that's the way that map would appear to me, that you've targeted, and in fact, looking at the bigger map, there's no other area that's that large targeted for high-scale development. And that's very concerning. Yeah, I don't know if you want to comment on that. Do we have more detail on sub areas within that large pink area?
Yeah, you're exactly right. What we showed, or what we're showing in this map, is the concept that we showed late 2019, early 2020. And that, let me make this smaller so I can see. Yes, large blob, and we're not treating that entire blob the same. We're breaking it up into smaller areas with the emphasis on the intensity being on Lancashire. And there's some, Cahuenga has, we're proposing some more intensity, but not like Lancashire, and then that portion of Riverside Drive as well. And then there's some interior multifamily in that area that we're also proposing some additional intensity. But once again, the real higher or greater intensity is along Lancashire. We can't really show any more detail at this point because we're still working things out. And our policy is to, we're at some point in the future, in next year, we're going to show in more detail, greater detail, these areas to the entire community plan community all at once. So we don't go into neighborhoods and show each one. We just put it all at once, and then we can talk about it with each individual neighborhood. So you're right, it does look like one big blob right now, but we're going to break it up.
Okay, yeah, we need to be very careful about, of course, traffic and a variety of other issues. Is there in the plan, are there suggestions for additional parks, schools, other infrastructure, widening of the streets, for example, to accommodate this larger population?
As part of this update, we do look at the mobility element and street designations, where we think maybe a different street right of way, or that includes the sidewalk, could be different if it warrants that. That's something that could happen, and we are going to be looking at that in certain areas. What we're proposing is land uses and zoning. And within the zoning, certain uses are allowed, and within certain zones, schools will be allowed. We will be proposing open space parcels, but it's not like we can go ahead and propose open space on privately owned parcels. That can't happen. But our policy document, if that's something that people want, a neighborhood or community wants, we can identify the need for some open space, a type of open space within this area, just in case some funding or opportunities come up in the future. These areas are pre-identified as to where to look, or maybe possibly locate a park.
Yeah, good. I think a park is important. The area to the east of Cahuenga, of course, that's all in the gray. Sort of implying that there's not going to be a greater density in that area, but state legislation, among other things, SCAG and all of that, seems to be pushing us to allow greater densities across all of the residential areas. Could you comment on that in terms of the plan?
Sure. The areas where you see color, that's where we're proposing to change the zoning. Everything in gray, we're basically just going to apply the new, keep the zoning the same, just apply the new zoning, but it's really what we're calling a translation from the current zoning to the new zoning, but we're not really changing the floor area ratio or the intensity or the density there. It doesn't mean that state law doesn't apply to certain those parcels. We're just saying that we're not putting any other regulations on them. Other state laws could apply.
I've got more questions, but I'll let other people chime in at this point.
Okay, we'll come back to Ren. I've got some questions myself, but I'll save them till the end. Tess, you had your hand up. Now it's down. Did you want to go ahead, or you're muted as well, Tess?
Thank you. So yeah, I've got 10,000 questions too, but I'll limit it to one or two for now. So thank you for the presentation. You said a few things in this presentation that I want to get some follow-up on. But I think first and foremost, this is a whole lot of information for people to be able to take in. And very respectfully, I represent the West Toluca Lake Residents Association, and I'm also a committee member of this Planning and Land Use Committee for the Neighborhood Council and a member of several other organizations. And we requested this information prior to the meeting. And I made a request today on behalf of these groups from LA City Planning. So we look forward to reviewing this in greater detail and giving it the consideration it is due, because this is a very, large bit of information to take in, to mull over, to discuss and thrash over. So we did not have adequate notice for this meeting, and we need reasonable notice as to when this will be agendized again, especially when it comes to input about the housing that Ren has mentioned. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I do very much appreciate this, this presentation. So a couple of questions here as we were going through this. Isaiah, you referenced feedback on more than one occasion. Can we get access to all of that feedback? That would be very useful, because I'd like to see. One thing in particular that jumped out at me is that there was no opposition to an increased FAR along Lankershim Boulevard. Well, that doesn't mean necessarily that it would be welcomed. Certainly that is a major commercial corridor, so it's an obvious place. But we're concerned about where where the housing element, the RENA designations are going to come. And do you have? I also want to get quick clarification on one of the first slides you showed. There's 3 areas. Is it Van Nuys? What were those 3 areas on one of your first slides, Isaiah? Is it Van Nuys, Sherman Oaks, and Toluca Lake? I couldn't make out the writing on the little 3 blue sections.
Yeah, so the Southeast Valley includes 3 community plan areas. That includes Van Nuys, North Sherman Oaks. That's one plan area. The second plan area, North Hollywood Valley Village.
Okay.
And the third is Sherman Oaks, Studio City, Toluca Lake, Cahuenga Pass.
Okay, it's just Sherman Oaks, Studio City. Okay, Cahuenga Pass. All right, great, because I couldn't quite make that out. That's good to know. And do you have population numbers for those 3 areas or the Southeast Valley? Do you have a population number for that, Isaiah, for this Southeast Valley Community Plan area?
We do have the existing population numbers. But so to answer your question about feedback summaries, that information is all on our website, and I could certainly follow up with links to those feedback summaries for you. And also, if you're looking for housing element data, you can certainly reach out to our housing element update team. We also have a performance management unit that would be more than happy to get you housing related data.
Yeah, but we also we also have population data for each community plan area. And just, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but you see 3 community plans there. The Van Nuys, North Sherman Oaks, and North Hollywood Valley Village, I believe, are around the density of the overall city, or slightly higher. The Sherman Oaks, Studio City, Toluca Lake, Cahuenga Pass is definitely much less dense than the rest of the city and the 2 other community plans, just to give you a little bit of relative perspective.
Okay, very good.
And just really quick, I may help you. I wrote down on my notes in this presentation, one of you guys said that those 3 areas, there was 390,000 people in 37 square miles.
Yeah, okay, right.
Yes.
Good. Okay, thank you, Fred. I actually jotted that down too, but I wasn't sure if that was for the three-piece area. So we did send an email requesting this information to the general Southeast Valley plan. So whoever gets that, Isaiah or David, if you could direct me to those resources, the feedback, the RENA numbers, I'd be very, thank you for your cat, Fred. I'd be very interested to know, on behalf of the community and the committee, what the historic RENA numbers for the 4th, 5th, and 6th cycle are, what was submitted, and then what was actually implemented, because I know there can be some variance in that. So those are my questions for now, but I'll come back with more later after other people have had a chance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tess. Let's go to Jonathan Gregory.
I thank you all for coming here and making this presentation. I'll be real quick. My first question is, it's just a yes or no. The transit oriented community, does this plan affect that, since that's a state law, I believe? Yes or no?
Transit oriented communities is a byproduct of Measure JJJ, which was voted in by the city of LA residents. So it's not state law, that's actually within the city of LA. And there are some areas in this community plan, or the community plans that are impacted, that are known as major transit stops. And so just overall, that there is, we are looking at those areas. They make sense, where there's rail stops, for example, to intensify. It depends, topography could come into play, or some other things may come into play where you're not really looking to intensify. But in general, those, near transit, or activity centers that are already kind of busy, it makes sense to sort of intensify there, because that's where you have the infrastructure and you have existing amenities and services, and areas that are far away from transit.
Excuse me, in this case, the question is, given that there are rules in the transit-oriented community grants that are issued, there are simply rules, proximity. Does the community, the plan that you're presenting, does it alter any of the rules? That's my question. Does it change anything?
Okay, so right now, for example, with this transit-oriented communities, you're talking about
in order to qualify for transit-oriented community
Yes.
exception, whatever you want to call it, a grant on a piece of property, it has to meet certain criteria. Do any of those criteria change as a result of this community plan? That's my question.
I guess I'm a little confused about the grant. We don't deal with grants with transit-oriented communities. You're given a bonus. You're allowed greater development rights in exchange for developing some affordable housing.
And it's issued as a grant on the property, so it goes with the property should it be sold.
It's issued as if you go ahead and come in for an entitlement and receive that entitlement, then you have the rights to go ahead and build that.
Right. Okay, so the question here, no matter what we want to call it, my question is, if presently there's a parcel of land that qualifies under transit-oriented community, it meets all the criteria, whether it has been granted or not for the particular property, does this in any way change that? Does this plan alter the criteria for seeking a transit-oriented community declaration on a piece of property?
We may go ahead and what they can qualify for under TOC with our new zoning code or our new land use. We may lock that in with our new zoning or tweak it, depending on whether or not we agree with that. That was a citywide.
That's the answer. It's not finalized yet. You're still working that out. Okay.
Correct.
My next question is, if you could, this is a yes or no also, can you provide us with a blow up map of that purple area? Because there's going to be a lot of questions. What's going on? Just like Ren started off with questions, if we could look at a blow up of the greater Toluca Lake area of what you have planned for density from Cahuenga east over to Lancashire. Can you do that? Yes or no? Do you have such a thing, a blow up map?
we can probably not right now, but we can, you know, go in there and but our intent is when we come back, these are concepts that we proposed, just kind of bubbles and saying, hey, do you think this is an area where we should be focusing the growth in? And then yes, no, or yeah, we generally agree, but we think this way. And that's the kind of feedback that we got. The next time we come back, we're going to be focusing in on areas. As I mentioned, that blob is going to be broken up into smaller sub areas. And that's where it makes sense to kind of blow it up and look at it. And we would come back to, for example, your community here and really talk about each corridor individually in these areas. And I think we could have a very fruitful discussion at that point. Right now, it's kind of a blob. And if you want to give us some feedback, and we did get some feedback right now, you know, Ren was saying that, you know, looking at the whole blob, you know, uniformly doesn't make sense. Yes, and that's the feedback that we got initially. So we're breaking things up more. And so
Okay.
we'll
I'll look forward, we'll all
Yes.
look forward to seeing a blow up of this map, even of what you've got going on right now, because I could see there's some details in there we couldn't really see, even on what you've got there. The next thing
May I interject with what I think is an answer to Jonathan's question? David, the housing element you can look at in very granular detail, which has already provided a layout of where added density is going to occur or is proposed to occur. So I can share that with you, Jonathan. That obviously has to dovetail with your plans, David, correct?
Well, ultimately, there's going to be one proposal for the area for each parcel. It's not like how the housing one can come up with something and we come up with something
Right.
different. We're going to coordinate as to what's what.
Okay.
You know, they're approaching things a little differently than we are. You know, we're doing it, you know, bigger general, you know, vision, and then we're going down. They've have a different timeline, and they're having to sort of do a quicker thing, you know, for themselves. And so, but yeah, there's going to be coordination so that you will know in greater detail what is going on with each corridor, with each parcel. So it's not, but we're not quite there yet in our process, but that's the next step where we want to get to.
Okay, my next, can I continue? My next question has to do with an elephant in the room that when I don't know a lot about your project and your process, but the elephant in the room is the use of public spaces. You're not going to find a lot of people in Greater Toluca Lake who are pleased with the present use of public space. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then that's the elephant we're talking about right now. And when I hear livable public spaces, that can mean livable for whom at this point. In other words, I'm not really into the politics of not talking about what's going on, but whatever the future is going to look like, if it looks like a pigsty, that's what we're dealing with in a lot of corners. So I'd be very interested in seeing some initiatives that address what is plaguing our communities everywhere in Los Angeles, which are tiny little strips of land that aren't properly equipped to prevent people from living there within feet of 50-mile-an-hour traffic and garbage everywhere and a lack of boundaries. So what I'm really talking about is you don't even mention the worst problem that all of the communities are facing is how to deal with all of this filth that's just all over the city. I don't care what language you want to use in doing it, but it's completely absent from the conversation. That's a comment. It doesn't request an answer. But if you want to have this conversation with people who live in Los Angeles and not even go there, good luck on that. Then everyone's going to put their head under the sand and pretend it isn't a problem, but it is. My last question, I'm just stupefied because you're from the planning department and you're talking about high density on Lankershim. You actually accentuated the idea of Lankershim being high density, which is a great plan. That's what it's supposed to be. And yet it was the very planning department, your planning department, that just approved this drive-through Raising Cane restaurant that evidently hasn't been built yet on the corner of Lameda and Lankershim, which is a 1,800 square foot, like smaller than most houses, restaurant using an enormous piece of land that I challenged the neighborhood council there at NoHo as to what they were thinking when they were doing this. They're all crying they want more housing, in density areas like Lancashire, but there you are in bed with that neighborhood council approving a ridiculous use of land right on Lancashire between large buildings for an 1,800 square foot drive-through restaurant. I simply am stupefied by the lack of direction. If you want it to be density, why would you be doing that? That's a comment. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I want to quickly respond to that last comment. Just that's why we're doing this. So where the community doesn't want that to happen, it doesn't happen right now. That rule is not in place, and that's why it was able to happen.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, you guys. Very good discussion. And let's go to Ron next. Go ahead, Ron.
Okay, I guess from the last thing you just said, you're getting feedback, and how long through this whole process will you be listening to the community? Because Seneca Lake is a pretty vocal community. We've had projects before, and if the community doesn't like it, it rises up. And I expect a lot of comment from the community when they see this big purple blob, wondering what is going on there. How much will you listen to the community? And through how many phases will you be listening to the community, and will they have real input and real effect?
Sure. I mean, this is one of a series of ongoing, opportunities to give us feedback. As I mentioned, we will be coming back with a more detailed land use map, next year. That's going to be a great opportunity to give some feedback. And, historically, we've come out with, either with boards and community rooms, before the pandemic, or we're doing virtual webinars. And we also have done office hours with select groups of people that share a common interest, such as neighborhoods. So that's another opportunity. So we plan on doing that in the future. We'll come back and discuss in greater detail some zoning. There will be a public hearing as well. There'll be, it'll have to go to City Planning Commission. It'll have to go to City Council. So there's still plenty of opportunity to give us feedback. And anytime you can email us, pick up the phone, and we'll talk. And we've talked with members of this community before several times. We've been to the Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council before, and Ryan L. Toon, we've definitely discussed things with him and other members. So we've heard things, and at the end of the day, I think what we want to do is make sure we give people an opportunity to give us feedback, and hopefully we can come up with a general consensus. We may not agree on everything, but that'll ultimately be decided by the elected officials. And what we can do is give you opportunities to give your input to us.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I'd like to say a couple of things really quickly before we go to the public, and then let's come back to the board members. I want to give the public a chance to speak before it gets too late, but really quick, I want to throw in two questions and a comment. First of all, yes, we would love to have you come to our regular board meetings. I think that's a great idea. The Ryan Altoon group was many years ago, and it's a whole new board and a lot of new residents that are participating now. So I think it would be a great idea to update the new kids on the block, including myself, and that'd be a nice thing to do. So let's plan that. Two quick questions or comments. You don't have to answer them now if you want to answer them later, but my main thing that I took notes on, do you guys work on any of the infrastructure improvements for the new density, or is there studies involved in how much the sewer can handle and electrical wires and et cetera, et cetera? And is that part of what's built into your community plan? That's question A. Question B is you also mentioned that open space on city parcels. And I'd really like to know, if possible, what city parcels may potentially be available for open space if that was an option. Is there a way we could find out what parcels are potential open space candidates? So those are my questions and comments. If you want to answer them now, fine. If you want to wait till later, I'll go to the public, up to you. But again, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, just really quick. First question, we still have to conduct an environmental impact report, and that includes a section on infrastructure. And we have to work with the Department of Water and Power and other departments who are the ones who deal with the infrastructure. And they give us information that is included in the environmental impact report. So all that will be in that report. Secondly, in terms of open space, that is a tricky one. I mean, many times, we have communities that identify maybe surplus parcels of government owned sometimes that they feel is a good opportunity. We're looking for that input. I mean, communities know things a lot more than we do, especially historically. It's like I said, we don't know what's happening with every single parcel, publicly owned parcel. And part of that is that's just talking to stakeholders and just, including discussions at times with other departments or other officials to hear some potential feedback. And sometimes you'll have maybe some small parking lots or some small surplus parcels that just that are adjacent to other infrastructure that may, they may not be huge parks, but there's something. But at the same time, you want these parcels to be something that's the community is able to utilize, and it's just not off the beaten path, and just becomes an area for that really nobody really enjoys.
Yeah, well, that would be really, when you said that, my eyes lit up and I thought, gosh, what parcels are in this neighborhood that may still be available for that? So I got excited about that. I think that's something you should look at to see if it's possible. Anyway, that being said, let's go to the public. And for members of the public, please raise your hand to ask questions to these gentlemen, and I will promote you and press the right buttons. Okay, here's our first speaker, David Wheatley. And let me make sure you can speak. Go ahead, David.
Thank you very much. My name is David Wheatley. I'm the co-chair of the Silver Lake Land Use Committee. And also I've been a stakeholder in Toluca Lake for a long time and coming to these meetings for a long time, ever since the disastrous Cahuenga Bloomfield project was approved without any opposition present a few years ago, and it's still not done. And I've been listening to presentations like yours, meaning the two of you, for a while. They're usually done by developers, and they sound the same as what you say. And the objections I have towards those, I have those objections toward yours because it's more about the ideas. I hope that you will be invited back to this group and become better prepared. When people ask you questions, well, what are the vehicle miles traveled? I'd appreciate it if you would know. And if questions about infrastructure or density, how many people left the area, and narrow it down to the scope of this land use group. We don't need to hear about Sherman Oaks or any of these other places. I mean, wish them well, go and have meals there, drive through, hey, great, Sherman Oaks. But this is about Toluca Lake. So I think you're, I'm sorry to say, remarkably unprepared for what this evening is about, especially for questions like mine and Jonathan's and Tess and Fred's and anybody else's. So, and also we really need to see these materials ahead of time. And I'd like somebody to please explain why we did not. And also the question about what sort of, how your organization responds to public input. You said, well, you have 100 of these reaching out. I love that term, reaching out. Reaching out means dog and pony show. Everybody has to take it. A couple questions, don't write them down. How things go, great, couple questions. They liked it, add another number to our list of outreaches and how many people we reached out to. I'd really like to see not just a summary of what the public is saying, but actually each individual question, an individual letter and email, so we can create our own summaries to find out what the public is thinking about what you are trying to do. Also, these state laws, SB 9 and 10, and the TOCs, you know, a future planned transit stop. Really? What if that never gets built? I mean, how are you guys going to answer these questions that, oh, I couldn't stop it. We had nothing to do with that. We just came to talk to you on whatever day it is today. How are you going to defend yourselves with that? What's your loophole? And city planning, let's remember Jose Huizar and Mr. Englander accepting bribes from developers. And there are two, as far as I know, of the 5 people on Plum were being investigated, and at least one other person on the city council being investigated as well. And my experience with city planning is that they're the same as the developers. They're shills for developers. Developers pay more money to expedite their project. What does an expedited project get that a non-expedited project does not? What are they paying for and what do they get? I would like you, both of you, to be able to answer all of these questions and more. What's happening to the population? Are you trying to get everybody out of their cars? How are you doing with that? I'll pause there and please respond to as many of these as you can. And please come back with good answers. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Is there any other members from the public? Please raise your hand. I will unmute you. Anybody?
Well, do you want to give them an
Oh,
opportunity?
here's one. Here we go.
Fred, do you want to give them an opportunity to respond perhaps first?
It's up to them if they want to do it now or at the very end. I think we should let one more speaker. Tiffany has her hand up. Let's have her talk, and you guys can respond as well. Go ahead, Tiffany. You can speak.
Hi, everyone. I'm here on behalf of our council office. I just wanted to let you all know that I was in attendance tonight, and we have an open dialogue with both the community and with the planning department. So if there's anything specific that you'd like us to take into consideration, I'd ask that the council as a board sort of maybe put together a list of questions or a document of concerns that we can work with the planning department on addressing or getting further answers as well. If you're not available to, set up time separately, we can help facilitate that dialogue and try to make sure that we're all on the same page and, what we're trying to achieve in bettering the community. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tiffany. Really quickly, let's go to Ren. Ren, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention in response to Tessa's question earlier and to David, this is the opening salvo of probably a year-long process. And I wanted to get this going quickly, get some of us warmed up for all of the questions and issues that are going to be coming through here. But we'll have plenty of time to look at the details and respond back in detail, I hope, and work with the planners to get this document ultimately at least close to what we need and want at Toluca Lake. The pink blob is a good first step. That's an area we all have to take a look at now, and as the detail starts to emerge and we are able to focus in, I'm hoping we'll actually have some real people meetings where we can interact in a more maybe less formal, a more interactive give and take kind of way. The early sessions that we had with the planners as they were bringing the concept forward, I thought were good meetings, and I hope we can get back to having in-person meetings and really bring more of the community together. But at this point, we're just kind of getting the ball rolling, getting these things on the table, and starting the discussion. And I think the planners are they're used to us, and they will come back, and council office will help us as well to get to the bottom of a number of issues here.
Okay, thank you, Ren. Let's go and test really quick. Kathy, I see your hand up, and then David and Isaiah, if you'd like to answer any of these questions, we'll go back to you. Go ahead, Tess.
Well, there's going to be a huge pile of questions for our guests, but Ren, I want to point out that, in very recent meetings, you said that we don't have very much time, and now you've said the opposite. So I'm not sure what is correct, but David and Isaiah, what deadlines are we looking at for feedback? Because I'm sure you understand and agree with the very important process, the democratic process, giving the community enough time to look at this, to comment, to ingest it. This is a huge amount of information, and for a lot of people, it's rather foreign. But there's nothing more important than the housing element and the community plan for the quality of life for everyone in this area and for the city of Los Angeles for that matter. So the question is, what deadlines are there for this to be implemented and for our feedback to be collected, received, and taken by you?
So we don't have any say pending deadlines for feedback right now. As I mentioned, sometime next year, like this is a large area, sometime next year, we'll be coming out with, or coming back to the community with more detailed land use maps. And that'll be a really good time to get the feedback, because we'll be able to look at the particular corridors broken up into various sub areas in more detail. And that's the feedback that we're looking for at that point in time. And we haven't been out to the community in a while, and maybe it seems like people are just getting new information thrown at them. But unfortunately, with the pandemic, and then we added, as Isaiah mentioned, the whole 8.5 miles of Ventura corridor, which is just a huge corridor that we had to refocus on for a little while. So now we're getting back to the rest of the community, including the Ventura Boulevard corridor. And as I mentioned, we'll be coming back with more detailed proposals. That'll be an excellent opportunity for us to have that better, more detailed discussion with each community. So, and that's just, that's one more step, and we can still have another conversation after that on the details.
And this isn't a criticism, David. I know this is a lot, but and I would like to respectfully ask the chairs of this committee, Fred and Ren, when such a special meeting is proposed, if you could check with all the committee members first, because this is a meeting that I would not want to miss, future meetings like this, and to get more people here and to make sure that we have enough information well enough in advance, at least 10 business days, if not more, to absorb and come back with questions. And you said sometime next year, David, would that be early, late-ish? And also, what's the ETA for the EIR completion?
So if I were to give you my best answer, probably middle of next year in terms of the map, it hopefully could come out earlier. And then we'll take that feedback, or and then we have to work through what that means in terms of what we feed into the EIR. So hopefully the EIR would start later in the year. Mm-hmm. And then the EIRs take a little while. Hopefully we can get through that with the least amount of hiccups as possible. So I don't know if that gives you an idea. I don't want to, it's such a large area. I don't want to make any promises as to this month, this year. Yeah. Okay. So next year we'll come out with maps, more detailed land use maps. And that's our, kind of one step at a time. Let's just get to that, because it's a huge area. And we know, there are other communities who have just as much, feedback as this community. And, there's going to be a lot of outreach that happens out there. And just to let you know, I mean, if you haven't already, we have an interest list that you can sign up for on our website, so that you get notified when we're going to be doing the next round of outreach, or rounds of outreach. And then we'll definitely make sure that, we keep in touch with the appropriate neighborhood council, so that, we can have, and as I mentioned also, we have, when we do the outreach, we also have office hours as well. So if the Toluca Lake neighborhood wanted to have a good small group discussion, we can definitely have that.
That's excellent. And Fred and Ren, let's put the outreach email portal on the next agenda for people to, be able to sign up if they are interested. Thank you.
Yes, very good comments. I agree with all that, and dying to have you back again with some more people and the rest of our board. Kathy, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Kathy. And let's see, unmute.
Thank you very much. Got that? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation and for being here tonight with us. My question, just to put out there, one thing about Toluca Lake, like so many other neighborhoods within the Los Angeles boundary, is that our neighborhood council has to do, and of course the planning department has to do with the city of LA, our neighborhood, our Chamber of Commerce, our homeowners association, and our actual boulevard of Riverside Drive, our business area, encompasses both Los Angeles and the city of Burbank. So as you are moving forward, I would encourage you to try to keep in mind what's going on with, and especially in Greater Toluca Lake, with our neighbors of a different city, and how your decisions impact the look of, unless somebody actually looked at the street signs, wouldn't notice a difference between Los Angeles and Burbank when they're driving our business area. Also, I'd like to know at some point, maybe not tonight, but we did have an approved business improvement plan. And I am concerned with the TOCs, where we have property now that is going to be developed. We will lose our post office, and the hub of that TOC is actually in Burbank. We are the radius is coming out to it that still qualifies under the TOC, where there are two intersecting metro lines, I think it is. So I just want to be mindful of the fact that our neighborhood, both residential and commercial, encompasses two different cities. And so while I realize you're really mainly concerned about Los Angeles, of course, as you should be, we as a community are concerned with meeting the needs of people in two different cities, as well as the look of our business district and also our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And we'll wrap this up really soon. Let's see. David's got his hand up. We can have him do a couple more comments, and we'll close the comments with the LA City Planning guys. But David Wheatley, did you have something else to say?
No, that's an old hand, but I'd like to
old
have
hand.
I'd love to have another go if there's a chance in a little bit, once I think about what I would say, usually a lot.
Do you want to have a short thing? Go ahead, and then we'll close it up with the planning guys.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'll ask the usual question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I've been a part of 4 appeals on projects. And what I have found is your bosses, the City Planning Commission and the Area Planning Commissioners, Plum, and the City Council approve every application, no matter how egregious, and they deny every appeal, no matter how meritorious. So I'd like to know, and also I hope you've studied the Stanley Milgram example of authority and obedience, because both of you are in the classic position of taking direction from authority and being obedient to that authority. And I'd like to know how you plan to use your authority as designated by others, and what your moral compass is as far as the public's concerned and the community as far as developing these plans. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, David. If you guys, actually, we got Lee Jameson, and then you guys can respond, and we'll go ahead. Lee, go ahead. If you had a question, Lee. Lee Jameson, did you have your hand up?
Yes. Okay, can you hear me now?
Go ahead, Lee. We can hear you. Yes.
In the city of Burbank, you can tell at Chandler and Clybourne that immediately when you're in a different city, the grass is green, it's well kept. When you get to LA city border, it's way lower quality. And I'd like to see the area look like Burbank, actually. But the first step is stopping developments. You see what they're doing is the politicians want homeless because it makes it justified to do more development. They develop more, and the apartments and stuff are so expensive. You have more people on the street. It has not solved the problem, but the developer, the mayor, the council get rich, and we get screwed. I don't think that's right. I would hope something could be done. Thank you.
Okay, Lee, thank you very much. Now I'll turn it over to Isaiah or David or Nathan, if you'd like to respond to any of that or close the meeting. The microphone is yours.
Sure. I'm not going to say too much. All I can say is that, we're working on land use and zoning improvements to the community. making sure or helping to make sure that we can accommodate a future growth in the city of LA in a way that makes as much sense as possible to the various stakeholders, particularly the communities that ultimately have to live with that development. So, you know, I think what we've tried to do to the extent we can, it's a large area, is give people as much opportunity to give us input. You know, I'm sorry if some people feel that maybe this is the first time they've seen something, or we haven't been around in a while. As I mentioned, you know, unfortunately, some, you know, between a unique pandemic and some additional, a huge addition to our work program, you know, it's taken us a little longer to get to this point, but, you know, we're moving forward. And what we can do is say that we will be back and we will have greater detail, and we can have what I think will be a more fruitful discussion at that point in time. We haven't really produced anything new lately. That's why, you know, there really wasn't anything new to talk about. And we kind of reiterated what's been planned to this point. But I think that when we come back with updated, more detailed maps, I think you know, we can definitely have a more fruitful discussion. And yeah, we're open to meeting at any time. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact us. And
could you give your contact info, or like your email, or the best way to contact you?
Yeah, you can email me or Isaiah or Nathan. Our names are on the website, but I can give you my email is david.olivo@lacity.org.
Okay, thank you very much, David. And Tess, do you have some comments?
Yeah, I just had one, I think, clarifying question. It was mentioned that the new zoning codes are being implemented throughout the city, but our area is the area which the new code will be applied first. And I assume you mean the Southeast Valley, or do you mean Toluca Lake? And what does this mean for us? It makes me nervous when we're guinea pigs for something like that.
Yeah, just to give a little bit of background, and you know, we didn't want to go too deep on this, but we have a new zoning code that's being developed, and the first part of the city that's going to use that new zoning code is downtown Los Angeles. And then the second community plan would be the Boyle Heights community plan area. And then after that, it's the Southwest and Southeast Valleys, the area around certain Orange Line stations that we're also planning for, and West LA. So it's for the entire community plan area, and you're not, these areas will not be guinea pigs. I mean, they're already going to be used somewhere else. And we're definitely making sure that the zones are being tailored for neighborhoods such as the Valley. I mean, zones for downtown LA obviously don't work for Riverside Drive. I mean, it's a whole different thing. So we're having to work with our zoning team to develop these new zones to make sure that they're tailored for, you know, a smaller neighborhood, commercial feel, or a village feel. So that's also taking a little bit of additional work as well. But it's a lot of that upfront work that we're doing now that we feel will pay dividends in the future. That will give, like I said, will give you more of that, what you see is what you get type of zoning, as opposed to here's some C2 zoning. What does that mean? You know, that doesn't really mean anything, you know, in many cases.
So the old designations, R1, R2, et cetera, will be abolished and make way for this new zoning designation, which will be decided by whom exactly?
You know, like, as I mentioned, for example, like R1 will be translated. It'll be the same thing, but it'll be called something else. And so that's, I mean, it's just going to be called something else. So there's really no difference there.
Okay.
And yeah, so but these new the new zoning will, for example, in let's just say a Long Lancashire. Now you're going to know what the floor, right off the bat. You can look at the zoning on one page. You know how much floor area you're going to have, how much density. You can look at that quickly. Sorry about that. And then how much, what the front is going to look like, how much window you're going to have, what kind of a setback you're going to have.
So then, in other words, just more detail, right?
More detailed, yes. It's partly known as kind of a little bit in planning circles. There's some it's form based in a way where it gives you more details about what the building's going to look like and where it's situated on the parcel, so that you can. I think the general public will be better able to understand what the zoning actually means for their neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one last comment from Lee. Go ahead, Lee Jameson. Lee, can you?
Yes, can you read me?
Yes, go ahead, Lee.
Okay, I just want to encourage people not to vote for Caruso. He's a developer, and that's coming up, the election. Do not vote for a developer. We'll be in worse shape than we're in now.
Okay, Lee, well, might be the wrong meeting for that announcement, but that being said, thank you, you guys, for your help and your advice. I think we need to do this very soon. Let me give this to Ryan really quick, because he's the one that set all this up.
I'm gonna get the drink though.
And maybe you can close the meeting for us. And Rand, unmute yourself.
There we go. Yeah, I really appreciate the planners coming in tonight and getting this started. Frankly, I thought we had sort of a deadline end of year, but now we're talking about next year. So obviously this is going to go on for a much longer period, but it deserves our attention as we go along, and I think we'll benefit from our familiarity with the plan, and I think the planners will benefit from our familiarity with the community. So we need that interaction to keep going over the next, if it's going to be a year, why we have a lot of time to do input and get output, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, you guys. Well, yeah, I could do this all night if you guys want to hang around, but I think you probably want to go home and go to bed. Anyhow, we'll definitely do it again. Please, let's do it soon. I'd love to do it for the rest of the general board. So Ren can be in touch, and we'll set something else up. Anyway, thanks again, everyone, for your time. Very informative. I look forward to learning more about this, and we'll get some more community members involved and make some great things happen.
Great, you're welcome.
On that note, good night, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.